UKIP and some of the right-wing parties are using is very unhelpful. It is totally unacceptable. You know, how can we have a situation where if somebody can't get an appointment at their GP surgery, they blame the immigrants. They can't get a house, they blame the immigrants. They can't, access a school place.
Are you saying that there is no increased pressure on GP surgeries
No.
What
What I'm saying is there's a blame game happening here. Blame everything on the immigrants. The problem is actually the country has had to have some cuts. So there has been a reduction in infrastructure. So there's been a reduction. The GPs, it's not always about immigration because some GPs are retired early. There's a shortage of GPs. That's why they can't get the appointments, not because there's queues of immigrants wanting appointments.
Time to bring Priti Patel from the Conservatives in on this. Priti, toxic language, scaremongering, scapegoating. Do you recognise those terms?
I think, you know, this, as we're hearing from this debate, divisive language is deeply unhelpful. We should all, I think, in this day and age, be able to have a sensible discussion about immigration in the 21st century, and that is right and proper, and that should be part of our discourse. I don't think it's right to scapegoat at all or use inflammatory stroke divisive language. That's not right.
Such as, if you are here illegally, go home or face arrest. Do you recognise that phrase?
No, let me put this into context. Let me put this into context as well. We also have to recognise that Britain has a proud history when it comes to immigration as well. And our history is about, you know, the communities that are here represented today. For all of us, that applies. But we have to recognise a couple of points too, that we need to have very much a sane debate about immigration and our border controls as well. This isn't about putting everybody in the same bracket and basket when we talk about immigration.
Was that van wrong that went around 6 London boroughs with that slogan across it?
Clearly that van was taken off the streets, basically, and that was obviously the right thing to do at the time. There's no doubt about that.
So you would condemn the language that was used on that side.
Let me just say something else. But obviously at the time, and in terms of, I don't know what the decision-making was, in terms of putting that van out and the messaging around that, there was a clear issue, in particular, about illegal immigrants coming to the United Kingdom, predominantly from Eastern European countries as well. Let's recognise that. And then, obviously, the associated knock-on effect in certain communities as well. You mentioned public services, GPs, etc. We have to recognise as well, you know, it's right that we have migration to the United Kingdom. Our economy depends on it. Let's be clear about that as well, particularly from a skills point of view. But to do that, we have to make sure that we have the right kind of facilities and infrastructure so that communities aren't under pressure as well.
And to return to my point, do you think that language was intemperate? Do you think that that language was not...
I think in hindsight, absolutely.
Right, OK. I want to go back to the audience, actually, to get some more questions from people. It's a young lady here, please.
Hi, my name's Kirith. I'm from London. I just think there's been too much negativity surrounding the issue of immigration lately. And my question is, shouldn't politicians be focusing on highlighting the positive aspects of immigration? I mean, after all, are we not where we are today because of the progress that immigration has led to? Don't you think politicians should be focusing more on that rather than highlighting the negative aspects again and again and again?
Shabana Mahmood, do you think that politicians are not making enough of the positives of immigration?
Well, look, I mean, I can speak for myself and for my colleagues in the Labour Party. If you saw Ed Miliband's speech just on Sunday, just a few days ago, he started with his own immigrant story. You know, he is the child of immigrants who came to this country fleeing the Nazis. That is a point he makes. He wouldn't be standing seeking election as Prime Minister of our country were it not for the fact that his parents came to this country as immigrants. I wouldn't be sitting before you answering this question on immigration if my granddad and my dad hadn't come to this country from Pakistan in the 1960s. So I think there's a responsibility on politicians across the board, but actually for those of us who have directly in our own families benefited from immigration, who are only here because of immigration, I think we have a particular responsibility, and that's why in my first question I pointed out that I have benefited from immigration. I am here because of immigration. I'm proud of that story, and I'm proud of our tradition of welcoming people, because fundamentally people come to work and look for a better life.
But didn't Labour mess up when it came to immigration? By Ed Miliband's own admission, that you got things quite considerably wrong, underestimated the numbers, and some of the pressures perhaps that we're seeing today is because of the system that was inherited one that, as I just said, your own leader admitted you got wrong.
Yeah, and Ed's been really clear on that, and we in the party have been clear on that. When we were in government, we got issues around transitional controls for European Union migration wrong. So the European Union expanded to bring in more countries from Eastern Europe, which were much poorer, had poorer economies. So it stood to reason that, of course, people in those countries, as part of the EU, would try and better their lives within other countries in the EU. And there were transitional controls that other countries put in so they could manage the numbers of people that were expected to come in so that they could deal with pressures on public services. We got that wrong. We didn't have transitional controls, and we do accept that. We hold our hands up to it. I think there's nothing else we can do other than say we did get that wrong.
Zuffar.
Yeah, I want to say the question is very valid. We have to show the positives of what immigration can bring to this country. My grandfather first came to Leicester 1919.
We haven't got long.
No,
by the
okay.
way, on this.
No, very quickly. Yeah. All I want to say is if you can go walk into any hospital up and down this country, you'll see people from the subcontinent as doctors, consultants, as nurses and staff. The NHS wouldn't run simply without us. The other point I want to make is we are a pro-European party. Europe is not the problem. The problem was the fact that people came from Europe day one were getting very generous benefits in the UK, which they weren't getting in their own countries. That's now under a little bit more control, and hopefully will be controlled further in the future. That was the problem. People who come from Europe and come here to work, we should be welcoming them because they're paying into the tax system, they're benefiting our country and helping us all.
Okay, last point from Tariq Mahmood, because we need to move on.
I wholly agree with you. Immigrants have made substantive contribution to the economy locally, nationally.
Including Romanians?
So those that are working in the economy, we have absolutely no issue with. Now, what I'm saying, and UKIP are saying, is that we need to have an Australian-style point system, so where we need skilled workers in this specific country, whether it's engineers, doctors, nurses, as long as they have the skills, experience, language, and the relevant points in order to satisfy the requirements, we'll have a specific commission. So we welcome immigration and positive immigration that contributes to the economy. We are all for. Now, we all have a similar story. My parents also came in the 50s and 60s. They contributed. We were migrants. We benefited from this country through the education system, through the health system. What we are saying in UKIP that we need to manage immigration more effectively. That's all we are saying.
Okay, this gentleman here. Yes, that's you, sir. Yes.
Just on your point.
Oh, let's get a mic to you first, please. Thank you.
Yeah, just on your point about migration and the point system, if you applied that point system to all of us in here, none of us would have got into this country.
Yeah.
Now, I'll respond to that. Within the point system, you also have skilled and unskilled workers. So certain individuals, if there's a specific requirement in 1 year for unskilled workers, clearly you would have met the requirement.
You don't know that. You don't know how skilled or unskilled he is. Maybe he's being modest.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that whether it's unskilled or skilled, dependent upon the needs of the economy, we are more than happy to take on. But all we are saying is we need to manage immigration more effectively through intelligent immigration policies, through the Australian-style points-based system, which is ethical, fair and transparent.
Okay, right. Just a very quick show of hands. Do you think that this country has let too many people into this country? Okay. Yasmin Khan, let's move on to the next question, please.
Okay, so our next question was quite popular with a lot of audience members, but we've chosen Guppy Bowler from Oxford to pose it for us.
Why are there so few black and Asian MPs?
Well, Zuffar Haq for the Lib Dems.
Yes, sadly, we've only ever had one Asian MP back in 2004 in a by-election in Leicester, as it happens, who lost his seat in the 2005 general election. Not for the will of...
An Asian couldn't get Asians in Leicester. Good grief.
Yeah.
That's a tough shout.
Okay, so, there is a huge number of good quality candidates up and down the country. We are a minority in a minority party. We don't have the luxury of having so many safe seats up and down the country. We've got some really talented candidates. We have a huge number of programmes within the party supporting people like me and a whole host of others. But sadly, we just don't have those seats available where we can just put people in and they can win and get in. But we are working incredibly hard to make sure that our future changes. We have got 8% of our peers in the House of Lords who are from BME backgrounds, which we're quite proud of, which is something that we can control. But unfortunately, it's down to the electorate and down to the voters to try and support people like me.
OK. Priti Patel for the Conservatives.
Well, look, what I'd first of all say, for those of you and others from our community that want to get involved in politics, that's where it starts. It starts at the grassroots. It really does. I'll just sort of put things into context from my point of view. I've been involved in my party for nearly 25 years, and I started at the grassroots because I wanted to get involved in not just politics, but community engagement, participation and public service in particular. That is part of the values that my parents taught me. So I came up through the Conservative Party. In terms of what we're doing, we are now, for this general election, so polling day in 2 weeks' time, we have the largest number of people standing for the Conservative Party from Asian, black and Asian minority backgrounds. We've got 45, and that's on top of the 11 that we've already got representing our party. So that's really good in terms of where we've come from. Before the 2010 general election, we were even lower. We were very low. And I think it is incumbent, certainly from my party, David Cameron's very clear, that he wants the Conservative Party to become more and more representative of British society. That is right and proper, that really is. And I think the way to do that is to encourage more participation at the grassroots, through local associations. Yes, we have peers in the House of Lords. We have many councillors as well, and that's a good place to start. It really is. And it's about nurturing people and mentoring people and making sure that they come through the party system so that they can stand in constituencies and win when it comes to general elections.
OK, Guppy, what do you think of that answer?
With all respect to Priti, as a politically active woman of colour, I would be embarrassed to stand for your party, and for most major political parties.
OK, there was a caveat there, and all of the parties.
Major political parties.
Right, why?
Because we socially accept structural racism within a lot of our social policies, be it immigration, be it detention centres, be it reduction of rights to the NHS for migrants or immigrants, be it to axing the funding to search and rescue in the Mediterranean.
So you wouldn't engage with any one of the major political parties?
I would potentially look towards the Greens, but I don't know. It's not necessarily about numbers for me. It's
Is that
more
because you could bring a husband over and not have to pay £18,600 in order to do that, Guppy?
But it's not necessarily about numbers. I don't care if there's 50% blacks and 50% white MPs. If it ends up that the black MPs and Asian MPs end up emulating white culture and structural racism, I don't want that. I want lived experience of being a person of colour in politics, so that social policy reflects that and is able to reduce social racism within society.
OK, well. Sharar Ali, what do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I'm very heartened to say that you would consider joining us, and I hope that you will. You've really put your finger on the button here. It's structural. It's institutional. I, as recently elected deputy leader not so long ago, last year, I've been entering the House of Commons a bit more regularly, and I am astonished at the lack of diversity when I go along to some meetings and some invitations.
In your own party, of course, because what have you got?
Our own party.
Tell us the numbers of BAME in the Greens.
Diversity in our party is appalling, and I'm ashamed of that, and I want us to do more about it. And do you know what? Partly I think that's because we're not tokenistic, that when you do come through into our party, it's for the right reasons, it's for being green. But I also want us to get better at selling, advertising what it is that we stand for, because I think when people understand better what it is that we stand for, and maybe have a diversity of faces presenting it, people that they might be able to identify with more, I think they will come to us in greater numbers. But
why are you so far behind the other parties? Because you have the worst representation, certainly on the...
it's shameful. I'm not going to disguise that.
But why is that?
Other people in my party might not want me to say that, but it's shameful.
You have a direct link to Natalie Bennett. Have you said to her this is shameful?
There are things that we're trying to do. We've got a BME manifesto for the first time. It's going to be launched next week. We've got some structural things that we're doing, but at the end of the day, it requires, we're not going to speak on your behalf. At the same time, there is a slight problem here as well. It doesn't mean that a white cannot represent a black, that a black cannot represent a white. So let's not just overindulge in the politics of race. What it's about is that I'm proud of the people in my party, actually. The amount of people who will strike against Islamophobia, they're not themselves Muslims. And I think we need that degree of inclusivity.